Hi, welcome. Today we'll be interviewing the man himself, George Washington. How are you?
Well, I'm really feeling that loss, but it'll be okay in the end.
I'm glad to hear your optimism. So I was wondering how you were feeling about your first big loss, even though you're only 22.
You see, I wasn't planning to surrender, but at the end of the day, you gotta do what's right for your man. And hey, I'm still young and only working for the British, so it's all good.
So, how do you feel about the battle at Fort Necessity in general?
I mean, it wasn't like it's our only fort. I had found it and it seemed like it'd be a good one to keep. And then we lost it, so that wasn't in the plan, but I have survived, adapted, and overcome. Now, I think I'm ready to do bigger and better things to redeem myself.
Well, I'm glad to hear that as well. Thank you for joining me today, and good luck with the rest of your life. Hi, welcome back. This time around, I won't be interviewing anyone, but I will have my dear friend Taylor on to join me in discussing the atrocities that occurred during what some call the massacre at Fort William Henry. So, Taylor, how do you feel about what occurred that day?
Hi, Claire! So, I think that is one of the more horrific events that happened during the French and Indian War. And it all happened because the French didn't have the best communication with the Indians to tell them they were supposed to help the British that did, in fact, surrender.
Yeah, taking the British who were already wounded and torturing them and scalping them until they died, as well as taking many others captive to sell for ransom money, was pretty grotesque and should be labeled as a massacre.
I agree. Not all encounters with natives were like this by that point in time. But the miscommunication that happened really was what made this an important event to look at, because the colonists and British were were victims of unwarranted brutality.
What's up, guys? I'm back and ready to interview William Pitt, who was promoted way back when and is sometimes known as the organizer of British victory in North America. How are you feeling from all that effort you put into the war?
Hi, Claire. I feel like I'm the best guy to come out of Britain. I personally looked at all the decisions about to be made and changed them if they needed to in order to prevent more screw-ups from happening that the previous guys let happen.
Well, that's good to hear. You really rallied the British and colonial side together in order to win the thing. What made you rise to power and make those decisions?
You see, my political opponents were making the wrong decisions, which made leeway for me to come in and use my brain how it's supposed to be used to win wars. It pained me to see the soldiers dying and commanders losing just because of other people's stupidity. I decided to rise up past my opponents and take charge, which ended up being the perfect way to turn the tide of the war.
Welcome back again. Now I'll be discussing reasons why the Treaty of Easton probably went down with my good pal Ashley.
Hello, everyone. So the Treaty of Easton was made about 5 years before the end of the war, and I really think that it was a good idea on the part of Britain.
Yeah, I would agree that it was a smart idea for them to initiate and carry out, and I think a motive behind that could include the fact that the Indians were better at killing the British, and the British were tired of it, and realized that the best way to solve that problem was to make a deal with the Indians, knowing that if they honored it, they wouldn't have a further problem.
I also think that and want to add that the natives hadn't learned their lesson yet, that even if a deal is honored for a while, the whites will eventually want more and go back on it. For the time being, I think it was a smart deal from both sides. However, because the Indians weren't dying as often for a cause that they cared little about, and the British had a greater advantage over the French, who were previously using the Indians to help fight.
We're back again for another sit down, and now we will be talking about how the British came to be in control of Fort Ticonderoga, which gave them control of the major Hudson River. Taylor, how crucial do you think this event was for the war?
Well, I believe that this event was a very important one during the time span of the French and Indian War, because as soon as the British gained control of that crucial access point, it took little time for the British to make major advancements from the point, and it made it easier for them to be closer to the French and attack in Canada.
I would have to say that would be a great analysis on the cruciality of this event, because if the British hadn't gained control at all, the war could have gone the other way or prolonged longer than it ended up going. The British needed this win in order to secure their overall win at the end of the war, which granted them the rights to Canada. Welcome to our final talk. This time I'll be joined by Ashley again, and we will be discussing the importance of another event, when Britain won Canada. Ashley, how do you feel about this event?
Well, I think that it was obviously the ending of the war in a fighting sense, because at that point, France had exhausted all of its resources and had little willpower left to fight. Britain, on the other hand, had all of its colonists and all of the fighters they could ship from the mainland.
It definitely was a long time coming from when the tide of the war turned for the first time and stayed with the side of the British, and after that, the French started depleting and getting weaker, especially with the British signing a treaty with the Indians.
For sure, the British definitely deserved to win this one at the end of the day, and all of these events helped shape the Revolutionary War that came almost directly after, in which the British colonies gained independence and formed the United States of America.